Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Starter Systems, and welcome to another Pro Motocross gameplay in MX Simulator. Today we are doing round number 7, Southwick National. Oh, it's one of my favorite tracks of the year. I love gnarly deep sand tracks, and Southwick definitely fits the bill for a sick, awesome sand track. It's definitely like the sandiest track of the year when it comes to the Pro Motocross schedule. And I love it, and not only do I love watching the crazy action that happens on track in real life, I also do fairly well on this track actually in sim when I do race it. Last year I went 4-6 in the 450 class for 5th overall, so one of my better finishes last year, and then had a couple good seasons, 450 and 250 back-to-back, and then I actually made my pro debut in MX Simulator back in 2012 on this track, so I like this track a lot. I've always had a lot of fun playing it in game, and this track is pretty fun. Again, built by the Race Factory Gaming crew. Got that nice good deep sand feel to it. The bumps and stuff are a little bit kind of hard to get used to sometimes if you're not that up to date on like playing the game and being naturally reflexive to things, but there's a way to figure it out, and once you figure out the appropriate way to use your speed and momentum and other abilities to attack the track, then sand tracks can be some of the most fun tracks to play in the game for sure. So pretty standard layout, or at least, you know, it's pretty much the same thing that they ran last year, where it's I don't really know what the correct version is. I've asked this question before, and I know that someone has answered and told me. I think that this is the backwards version, but through the Southwicks that I've seen, this has been used, you know, for years, and then they went to the version that they used from like 2000 and trying to think like 2004, 2003 until about 2013. They used the what I consider the forwards version, where the first corner goes left, this first corner goes right, and then it does the track counterclockwise, whereas the other version went clockwise. So again, I don't know. You know, I'm sure I'll have someone from Massachusetts chime in and be like, "It's this way, you dumbass," or something. And that's fine, because I'm not always correct about everything, and I know I'm not. So, but yeah, it's a fun track. Obviously, if you're watching this for the first time, you can hit the download link in the description and play it for yourself and enjoy it in sim if you have it. Otherwise, you can sit back and listen to me talk about real-life moto for an extended period of time. And I know that I've been a little bit behind or lacking on doing these videos. I've been incredibly swamped with real-life situations and whatnot, and I'll divulge into that a little bit more in an upcoming track walk video that I'm going to do, where I kind of talk a little bit about the current channel status and what is coming and what I can kind of talk about with my career as well. But sit tight and listen to talk about some pro motocross. All right, let's jump into it. So since the last time I actually talked about it, which was the High Point gameplay, a lot has changed, obviously. You know, Baggett had the points lead the couple weeks off that I didn't do a video talking about this stuff, and that was kind of a unique situation. First time we've seen the number 4 machine have the red plate since Ricky Carmichael had it. Baggett has had 4 since 2012 and never did actually possess the red plate and run it at any point in time. He ran number 1 in the national championship in 2012 and had the red plate for Hangtown, but that was the only time he had it. So never had 4 and never had the red plate at the same time. So that was kind of, you know, cool, unique, whatever you want to call it. But it was good on Baggett to have the points lead. You know, definitely looked like he kind of stepped up his game from what he was doing at the beginning of the year, which was almost nothing. Well, not nothing, but, you know, like, he had a lot of hype coming into the season and didn't really produce at Hangtown, at least in my opinion. And I'm sure he would kind of feel the same way given where he's at in the season now. So that was cool. But Tomac went out and won the overall at Muddy Creek 2 weeks ago. He went 2-1 to Anderson's 1-2, so they split, but Baggett went 3-3, so he gained, you know, a good chunk of points. And then RedBud happened this week, and interesting week of racing for sure. It's definitely one of those weeks where you kind of assumed Tomac was going to win, but you felt if Baggett could start with him, it might be a different story. And they started together in the first moto, and they kind of walked through the field together, but Tomac made like quicker work of everybody, and Baggett took a little while to get going. And once he did, Tomac was kind of gone. Baggett caught him. They had a good sort of toe-to-toe battle down to the line, but Tomac held on. So that was kind of cool because it was like the first time this year that those two actually like really faced off, because they're never really in the same stretch of track in a moto together very often. So that gave us a little taste of it. By that point, Tomac had, you know, closed it in within 1 point of Baggett, so we're like, oh man, Moto 2 is going to be crazy. Whoever finishes in front of whom is probably going to come out with the points lead. What's going to happen, nobody knows. And then Baggett rips the whole shot in Moto 2, and I'm sitting there as he's going into turn 1 going like, oh man, he is about to like go to town. Tomac, like I was scanning looking for Tomac, not looking at the front, and I see Tomac's like not even, like he's barely inside of the top 10, or, you know, didn't get the greatest of starts. Obviously not a whole shot. And then suddenly Barsha slips around the outside of Baggett going into the second corner, and I'm like, what? How does Baggett have the entire right-hand 180-degree corner all to himself to use, and Barsha goes all the way around the outside of him? I was like completely dumbfounded, and that actually turned out to be kind of a crucial point, at least what I thought was a crucial point, because Barsha getting in front of Baggett caused Baggett to get kind of like slowed up, like didn't try to take off immediately, and Anderson was able to strike, and the second Anderson striked on it, Baggett kind of freaked out, went to an outside line trying to hold on to the spot, and then that line came together with Anderson, and then probably the point of the weekend that was most talked about, at least in the 450 class, their lines came together. Anderson's on the inside of the off camber, the, you know, famous off camber at RedBud before the RedBud table, and they come together. Anderson seemingly slows down a little bit. Baggett and him come together, but like almost at a standstill at that point. And Baggett tips over, but he's in front of the entire field, and they've only gone 5 corners at this point in the moto. So he gets kind of stuck in a situation where he can't get up because riders are trying to avoid him. He ends up dead last, has to charge to the field, only gets to 10th in the end of it, I believe it was. And supposedly, from what I'm hearing, he actually sustained a hand or thumb injury in that crash with Anderson. I'm not sure if it was at any point like falling to the ground or in the actual contact, which seemed pretty harmless, so I'd imagine it must have been falling to the ground. So that kind of sucks, but amazing that he was still able to kind of fight through that pain and get into the top 10 by the end of the moto. My opinions of that whole crash was like, okay, yeah, Anderson did kind of slow down, but I think he slowed down because he was more worried about the like immediate threat of contact with Baggett, and if Baggett was going to send it, then Anderson needed to stop or slow down because they were going to make heavy contact if Baggett was just going to hold it on like it looked like he was going to do. But they both kind of slowed down at the same time, thinking one was going to do the other thing. And then because their lines came together, Baggett just ended up right behind him and his wheel clipped and he fell over. From an outsider's point of view, given that Anderson's kind of shot back at Baggett, who was talking a little bit of crap, Anderson said something about like, it's amazing how much you talk when you start winning or something like that on Twitter. And then he said, oh, Tomac liked my tweet, and it was just a whole thing. But, you know, from the outsider's point of view, and you think Anderson and Baggett don't like each other, that, you know, obviously there must have been some sort of, you know, vendetta that Anderson went after him. But I don't choose to see it as that. I mean, maybe in some sense he obviously went in there thinking like, oh, it's Baggett, I'm not going to give him an inch. But if that was the case, you would think that he kept it on longer, like kept it wick through that corner so that if where there was contact, at the very least they were both going down, if not Baggett was the only one going down because Anderson had the inside line. So I just think it was one of those situations, lines come together, it sucked. If Baggett wasn't in the like exact main line, he probably could have gotten up still inside of the top 10 because it really was just a tip over. But, you know, he ended up in the main line. Everybody's trying to avoid him. It's an off camber. It's a terrible spot to go down, and he ended up having to wait. So for Baggett, it sucks. For everybody else, it's kind of a good news because Tomac was able to get into like 5th after a couple corners, and he was in 3rd before he knew it. And Barsha and Anderson are in front of him. Tomac comes up behind him just as when Anderson looks like he's going to get Barsha. Tomac disposes of Anderson. Then Tomac hunts down Barsha as they both get away from Anderson a little bit, and Tomac by the halfway point I think was into the lead and checked out, went 1-1, gained the points lead back, and now we're going into Southwick, which is arguably his best track of the season because he went 1-1 there last year over Roxon, who went 20 out of 24 motos and only lost 3 motos to Tomac all year long, and 2 of them were at Southwick. So Obviously, Tomac knows this track well. He has a setup from his previous bike that he can probably hop onto his current setup and run with and feel comfortable at Southwick. And he's just the type of guy that likes to just hammer stuff and go wide open anyway. So, I mean, Southwick just seems like not necessarily 100% given kind of weekend, but like if Tomac doesn't win this weekend, I think I would be pretty shocked, and I would assume a lot of people would also be shocked if he didn't. So now, you know, Tomac has a nice little points lead. I think it's 13 points or so roughly, and Baggett has to kind of play catch up again, and he's going into a situation where he's not really like the greatest in the sand. He went to Lommel, which is probably one of the gnarliest sand tracks in the world currently, and just kind of pooped the bed, to be honest, for the USA in 2012. Not that he was terrible, but he was the throwaway scorer, and he just didn't look like comfortable in the sand all weekend. And he's never really been like a balls out in the sand kind of guy. Like, he's always been fast, obviously, but like methodically working is more his forte than just sending it, which he has done in the past. But I'm saying I don't know if it's really what he's going to do right now, especially if he's injured. So this championship might have taken its, you know, quote unquote dramatic turn at RedBud, where, you know, that situation happens. Baggett maybe breaks his hand or his thumb, or has an injury to his hand or thumb, and he's about to go into a track that it might be the worst to have an injury to his hand or thumb, because he's gonna have to work the bike a lot. Tomac goes 1-1. He's coming into a track where he could go 1-1. I mean, it's pretty feasible that, you know, it's not unfathomable that by the end of Southwick, Tomac could be walking away with a gigantic points lead of 1 race distance or more. So we'll see how it plays out. In my opinion, like I said, I think Tomac's going to win this weekend. If he goes 1-1, I'm going to just say, yep, that's exactly what I thought. If he goes, you know, 3-1 or whatever, then it's like, okay, yeah, maybe he had a fall. Maybe he just didn't like the, you know, his setup in the first moto, whatever. And speaking of Tomac, I mean, I really like the guy. I like when he's on it, how freaking fast he is. But I don't know, it's just me, but maybe it is just me, maybe it's not. It just seems like he doesn't really ride or ever do much of anything with a sense of urgency. Like, when he's on it, he hauls tail, gets through the field quickly, but when he's not like 100%, I guess, he just kind of rides a calm, steady pace, which is good, because in the past, him riding over his head has bit him, so maybe it's him just kind of calming down. But it's always just so weird, because like, he sat behind Barsha and Anderson, it felt like, for so long, when in the first moto he was like, not only was he clearly faster than Barsha, but I mean, like, he just never dealt with Anderson in the first moto, so you'd have thought he mentally would have been like, oh yeah, I've got Anderson covered, let me just, you know, rip around a few outsides. And no offense to those guys, I mean, they're all hauling serious butt, but it just seems like Tomac doesn't necessarily ride with like a dramatic sense of urgency anymore. And like I said, I think that's probably a good thing for him, because he's had big crashes in the past. But I was almost like frustrated watching it, because I'm like, how long are you just gonna toy with these guys? Like, you're just sitting behind Justin Barsha, and you can go probably 3 seconds a lap faster than what you're doing right now, but you're just like, I don't, waiting for a perfect opportunity or something. I don't know. But you know, obviously he figured it out. Good on him. I still, you know, have him picked as the guy that I think is going to win this championship. I don't think Baggett's going to really turn the tables, and even when he had the points lead, I didn't really feel like he had it in his grasps or anything. I still believed Tomac was going to be the guy. So just a little observation I had about Tomac. Doesn't necessarily mean anything, just something I was picking up in that second moto, where I was watching it kind of dying slowly on the inside, just thinking like, he's sitting here toying with him. Like, he could pass him probably whenever he wants. And when he did pass him, he got away pretty quick. So that's what I mean by that, is he definitely had the pace to get away if he wanted to, but it just seemed kind of weird that he was sitting back and waiting. But cool beans. Tomac points leader. We'll see what Baggett can do to respond. I don't necessarily see Marvin or you know, Anderson coming up and making Tomac really have a tough weekend this weekend, but they could. And you know, maybe some Randy comes in and makes things really interesting. You never know. Southwick is always a wild card. I bet John Dowd shows up at age 51 and finishes on the podium. He could do it, I bet. But on a 250 class, I mean, is there anybody that doesn't believe Zach Osborne's going to win this title now? I mean, he's got over a race distance lead, 35 points now or something. He pretty much got like handed the overall this weekend. Like, not to be snide or cynical or anything along those lines, but Alex Martin was going to win that overall and just take it handily. And before you know it, Martin's upside down before the rollers in the second moto. And Mitchell Harrison, who, oh my God, when did he show up and start racing, takes over the lead. Osborne tails him for a while, then passes him for the lead, wins the overall. I mean, it's just like Osborne is, it's luck, but like I don't like saying that because he is probably, and most of the time is, so far this year at least, is the best guy in that class. But like, Alex Martin isn't a guy that like crashes like that a lot. Like, he's usually pretty consistent, and when you get him in a situation where he can run the same pace and win a moto and just be calm and collected, he's proven that he can do that. So like, it was just so weird to see him crash, and then like you're saying like, oh man, Osborne, he's gonna win this thing again, like they gave it to him. But I mean, that's just what you got to do to be a champion. You got to minimize the damage when you can and take the opportunities when they come to you. And so far, he's doing a pretty dang good job of that for sure, because he's had a lot of moments where you're like, oh, these guys can gain huge chunks of points on him. And he's like, nope, let me just finish third. And, you know, you guys can go 1-7 and 2-5, and I'll go 3-3 and just, you know, handle my business. So that's cool. I think Osborne is gonna be a shoo-in to win the title now as well. I mean, we're halfway into the season. He's got almost 2 moto distant lead, you know, like he's continuing to stretch it out week in and week out. His 3rd overall win this past weekend at RedBud. Unlike most of the other competitors he's about to race this weekend, he has raced a lot of the deep European sand tracks before. Hence, living in England and racing GPs for 4 years will do that to you, where he'll end up racing Lierop and Lommel usually every year, and probably ends up doing the Lommel Stopwatch Nationals with all the guys in Belgium every year too, so, or did, you know, back then. So I'm sure he knows how to ride the sand very well and very capably, and probably is going to kick some butt this weekend. And you know, obviously the Martin brothers living in Millville, the parents own the Millville track, and that track being kind of sandy might have something to say about it. And clearly it seemed to me like they were the 3 best guys this past weekend. Like, J Mart crashing all by himself in the second corner of the second moto was kind of like that's unfortunate. But I mean, he Alex and Osborne were like killing it that first moto. They were just slowly inching away from everybody, just running similar lap times. Fantastic pace. We saw a good battle at the end of that first moto with Osborne and J Mart going at it. So seemed like Osborne was going to be feisty in that second moto anyway, but J Mart again, whole shots, crashes pretty much all by himself. I mean, no one else to blame. So what are you gonna do? I mean, they kind of keep shooting themselves in the foot, and Osborne keeps saying like, thank you kindly, I'm gonna take this position and run with it, no big deal. So I mean, I don't know about you guys, but in my opinion, I just feel like Osborne has got this train rolling. He's got the overalls, he's got the momentum, he's got the giant points lead. He can pretty much manage this thing home. And I mean, there's 12 motos left to run, so technically speaking, if you finish second every moto, and A-Mart's in second in the points now, I believe. If A-Mart finished, you know, if he won every moto from here and Osborne finished second in every moto, technically speaking, I don't think he would hang on. Well, I forget what the points lead is. If it's 36, they would tie. If it's 38, they wouldn't, but I think it's 38. So that's like a tall task, but I mean, I guess if he does finish second from here on out, you know, then he's going to win the championship. But I kind of, you know, expected that anyway. You know, go back, listen to my Hangtown video, and just felt like Osborne was the best of those guys, had seemingly the most, well, I mean, obviously he's the oldest, one of the oldest in the class, so he has probably the most experience, Not that he's ever been in a championship situation. That's more J-Mart's forte, but J-Mart has had so many weird little mistakes and miscues that it almost looks like he is still kind of the rookie in the class with the way that he's happened to go through weird ups and downs this season. But, you know, Osborne continues to be steady, and what are they going to do to stop him? I have a tough time kind of figuring it out. So far, there hasn't been many weaknesses. He gets a bad start, and he walks through the field. He gets a good start, and he stays up front. So that's what a champion does. You know, they're that good, and that's how good Osborne has been this outdoor season. So going into Southwick, I just, like I said, see more of the same. Yeah, maybe J-Mart starts in front of him. Maybe they have a good battle. Maybe J-Mart even wins the overall this weekend, but he still needs to take big chunks of points away from Osborne. And unless a crash happens or something dire, his bike blows up, anything along those lines, I don't see Osborne just suddenly losing a ginormous chunk of points. He's going to have a bad moto because he hasn't really had one yet, so he's due. But the extent of the bad moto I don't think is going to be like overly dramatic or anything gigantic. He's just going to have, you know, like at the worst a DNF, and it's probably not going to be from him getting hurt. It's going to be a bike malfunction or something stupid like that, or and at, you know, I think at the best his worst motos he's going to get is like a 5th, because that's, you know, he just, like I said, he gets bad starts, walks through the field. So we'll see. I mean, obviously half of the season is done, and we have a lot of answers of what could happen going into the second half of the season, but that's why they drop the gate every Saturday. You know, never really know who's gonna win and what they're gonna do and how they're gonna do it. So I'm excited for Southwick. I mean, I love this track, like I mentioned. Great track to watch racing at. Can't believe I haven't actually gone there in real life, but I'm sure I will someday. And hope the people that are going in real life do actually enjoy it this weekend. And I hope the people that aren't or are going and actually watch this video did enjoy the video, because I like producing videos. And like I said, I will have more updates coming soon about the channel and what's going on. All good news, but just, you know, little personal things going on that I'm trying to accomplish before I get too focused in on the channel. But I appreciate you guys watching, taking the time, and as always, subscribing and liking any of our content that we have. And if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, any things you heard me say in this video that you'd like to comment on and air out, even if it's negative or positive, whatever, I'm always happy to hear them and try to respond to anything good or bad. If you think that I'm an idiot and something I said pissed you off, obviously you have the freedom of speech to write something back in the comment section below and tell me why I'm an idiot, and I'll gladly explain why I said something that I did in this video. But again, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, like, subscribe, comment, the usual. But for Kellen here on Start Your Systems, we'll see you guys in the next one.